Welcome to One Mind Zen. Tonight's Dharma talk is given by Robert Coho Epstein.
So Bankei said that the Buddha mind is unborn and inherent in our very existence as sentient beings. And that inherency also touches into the idea of Buddha nature itself, that Buddha mind is inherent in our own makeup. It's not something that's acquired. It's our nature. Bankei says that this inherent Buddha mind, which also functions as a kind of inherent intelligence, which is kind of an interesting take, not necessarily conscious, but working through throughout awareness and in charge of our cognition, perception, and actions in a fundamental way, is capable of managing our existence without any need for us to interfere. So our delusory thoughts and ideas and the idea that we're in charge of our life and activities, basically our entire egoic configuration, that we are responsible if things go this way or that way. You know, since we're in charge, we're also responsible. Only gets in the way and doesn't really accomplish anything. Now, if you were to take this too literally in the wrong way, you might walk in front of a car or not pay your bills, but let's take it as a perspective to see what it may reveal. In a way, this perspective, rather than waiting for some supernatural force to take us from one place to another, which I don't think is what Bankei means, it seems similar to me to the idea, just to make a little modern comparison, to the idea of neurosis in modern psychology, although that word is not used too much today. I personally like it a lot. Neurotic. I'm from New York, so it's kind of a thing. Neurotic ideas and behavior, in my view, are those thoughts and ideas that don't really accomplish anything, but are based on false ideas of self and based on anxiety and sort of a false relationship to expectations and actions. So we may go around in circles trying to decide whether to do something or what choices to make or how to respond to events or relationships. Or if you're like me, and I think like many other people, maybe it's just me, circulate in your mind things that happened a long time ago and worry about them, even though they've been over for a long time, and relitigate, reconfigure things that are over, not drop them. I think the human mind has a tendency to be a little neurotic that way anyway, and I think the Buddha may have pointed that out. But that kind of obsessive circular thinking doesn't really accomplish anything except to make our process of doing things more convoluted and complicated than it really is, and causing us extra suffering, doubt, and anxiety. And hopefully our practice makes a dent in that and in those tendencies to whatever extent. Bankei advises us to let the Buddha mind do the work. And we can relax and play our part as life goes along. This also keys into the idea of faith in the Mahayana, which is another idea that appears in Zen teaching and literature. It's not faith in a higher being or something outside of ourselves, but it's faith in the principles of the Dharma, and that if we follow them, they'll carry us along the path. This faith in our own embodiment of the Dharma, the fundamental principles of our own mind, as Bankei configures it, is the same as having faith in our own inherent Buddha mind, following the formula that ordinary mind, our present mind just as it is, without any fundamental or alterations, maybe leaving out some of the junk, has all the properties and capabilities of enlightened mind, except for those deluded ideas of our egoic configuration. These enlightened functions and properties are obscured or misunderstood because of those. And so we approach our lives to a certain extent, if we are not practicing, with a kind of blurriness and hesitancy that's caused by our failure to recognize our own fundamental nature and keep it in our consciousness. I mentioned these things in passing, and some of them I'll take up a little further along. So here's Bankei, in case you thought that maybe I was making up what he said. Here he is. People fail to realize that right within themselves, they're fully endowed with the Buddha mind they have from their parents innately. And that's kind of interesting. So they lose their freedom and talk about wanting to, quote, accord with original mind. When you've realized that the Buddha mind you have from your parents is unborn and marvelously illuminating, your hands and feet will function freely. And that's the working of the marvelously illuminating Buddha mind, which is unborn. So Bankei is quoted a lot talking about the unborn, the unborn, the unborn, but that's what he's talking about. Bankei mentions the Buddha mind that you have from your parents, and this is reminiscent of the famous Zen koan, what was your original face before your parents were born? It's a kind of funny juxtaposition there. If you go away from the present moment to resolve that koan, you go into a kind of fantasy. And yet it's a very provocative question akin to what am I fundamentally and what is my true or original nature? Well, according to Zen, your fundamental nature is not something that you can gain or lose. So whatever that fundamental nature is, it must be the same fundamental nature that you have right now and is serving you right now as it has in the past. So if we look into this original face or original nature and look into it, thank you, in our current situation, this original nature is functioning right now. When we think, when we walk, when we see a bird fly by, and we say the bird flew by and the master grabs our nose, when we smell dinner coming from the kitchen. So Bankei suggests that these functions are not independent or bare physical mechanisms, but that the fundamental nature or Buddha mind is kind of coordinating and running our whole show. So what is it? And how is it unborn? It seems that we go through many changes in life as we go from birth through various circumstances and then eventually to old age and death. But the fundamental Buddha nature, that is our ability to function consciously as a coordinated whole being in contact with others, our environment, and directly or indirectly as part of the universe with senses and thinking and awareness within what Buddha called the all, doesn't really alter in any significant way, although our actual perceptual and mental inputs may get a little blurry. It's part and parcel of and yet able to take in hand what life throws at it, including changes in our own physical and perceptual capabilities as we get older. And depending on how practiced we are, we can even lose a certain degree of our capacities and still be very clear that the wholeness of our Buddha nature is still perfectly intact. We get ill, we go through various circumstances, and as Master Ma said when he was asked how he was doing when he was on his deathbed, he said, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. When the sun is shining on you and you have perfect health, that is Buddha. When the moon is out and you're very sick, that is also Buddha. When the moon is very clear and you see it distinctly, that is Buddha. And when the moon is very fuzzy, famously, that is the hazy moon of enlightenment. So there are many distinctions in life and how we are doing. We undergo many good or bad situations, but Buddha is the same in all circumstances because whatever changing circumstances we're in, that is Buddha. Our fundamental nature, the unborn Buddha nature, is always there to help you be sick or help you be well, whatever the case may be. So what is it? Buddha suggests, like Bankei, that the unborn is in fact a reality, not just an idea, and that the unborn is the key to escaping the dukkha of samsara, the suffering that's inherent in the world of changes that we inhabit and are part of. In the old Buddhist suttas, where Buddha talks about this, he does make it sound like the unborn is something that we have to realize or reach by progressively detaching or disarming a bunch of other distracting mechanisms that we are heir to. And he also said in another sutta that the mind is radiant, but it gets covered over by incoming defilements. And so it becomes obscured. And if you're a wise person, you practice and you go through those distractions and defilements to get to the radiant mind, which is already there. without a quiet mind and a discerning sort of mindfulness, it is very difficult to become conscious of the unborn and completely self-sufficient nature of the unborn Buddha nature that is the root of our human experience. And this is basically the impetus for the entire meditative path. Quiet the mind through concentration and relaxation of the mind and body so that we're in a state to go deeper and see more clearly, and then develop mindfulness, insight, and wisdom in this quieter, more relaxed and open state so that we can look within and discern our inner enlightened nature. But that enlightened nature is here right now. Bankei takes a slightly different approach from this, which is very reminiscent of some of the Zen traditions that are based in sudden awakening, and says, which makes sense because he's a Zen guy, and says that we can look right now and see that the fundamental nature, the unborn Buddha mind, is right here, right now, and is already in full flower, doing its miraculous activity of keeping us standing up straight and moving out of the way of moving cars, those moving cars, helping us eat when we're hungry and sleep when we're tired right now. All the spokes of the wheel of our lives point back to the inner hub, which connects everything and coordinates everything, which is fundamental nature, the fundamental nature of the unborn Buddha mind. So there it is, right here. As Linji said, the true person of no rank is continually going in and out through the portals or sense gates of the face. Linji is making that same suggestion as Bankei. Oh, I mispronounced him finally. Bankei, excuse me. That the true self, the true mind, the original mind, the unborn Buddha nature is at play in everything you think, feel, and touch. The fact that you are perceiving something, the fact that you are walking one foot after the other, the fact that you are eating and drinking, the fact that you get hungry and you eat and you get tired and you sleep is the proof and demonstration of the activity of the unborn Buddha nature as you. When you see, cognize, and then experience the image from your eyes, the true person that you are, to paraphrase Linji, which is colorless, formless, and yet fully present in form, like the original face you came into life with, which was transmitted by your parents through the life force, and is the core or foundation of every act of sentience, resulting in a continuous flow of experience, though constantly changing, is always present. I'm going to have to redo that sentence. Our conscious cognition fluidly inhabits and coordinates every act of thought, feeling, and perception, and miraculously coordinates all of our activity. We could say the brain is doing this from our Western standpoint, but what about the activity of the nervous system and how it coordinates with the brain? What about the senses and how they coordinate with the body? How about those actions and reactions that occur autonomically? How about the way in which every cell is able to register every message from messenger RNA and take coordinated complex actions based on the part of the DNA blueprint that's activated by a combination of messaging, epigenetic activation and deactivation, enzyme activations, and sensory responses to the environment, some conscious, some subconscious, and cells, blood-brain cells, semi-autonomic breathing and movement, all coordinated together through conscious and semi-conscious activity. That's another sentence that I have to redo. How is all of that done? Well, there's a scientific explanation for everything, but the fact that all of that comes together and is coordinated by an aware capacity is not explained by science. I don't think it is. Not that I'm a scientist. Well, is there an overseeing big picture awareness that allows all these things to take place synchronously, making constant adjustments? You could say that the entire body mind is engaged in this kind of constant activity and adjustment, and that Buddha mind is both in all of that and in the entire sensibility of having a body mind and being able to engage with it sensibly from moment to moment. But beyond that is the unborn awareness itself, when everything else has gotten relatively quiet and we can see nothing but open space in the darkness, breathing semi-autonomously, letting go of stress, relaxing undue conditioned thinking, and just being present to what is. The Buddha suggests that this whole realm of activity, with all its constant adjustment and activities, its frustrations and expectations, can be released in a way that allows us to be present and to enjoy the presence of the original nature. And that this is the way in which we satisfy the Buddhist path. In the Zen path, we're looking at this as directly as possible and skipping a lot of the ceremony, not all of it. We don't worship the Buddha. we look for the Buddha nature within. We don't rely on chanting, but we chant the Heart Sutra to remember that form is empty, yet emptiness is not a thing to acquire or desire. We don't spend undue time bowing, but, well, maybe sometimes we do, but we bow to acknowledge the Buddha nature. We don't spend a lot of time on sutra reading. A lot of us don't, but we meditate in accord with the sutras. We don't spend a lot of energy on titles and rank. As Linji says, the real person is the person of no rank. But we accept the titles that come along the path, knowing that the Buddha nature has no rank or title. Like our original face, it's impossible to see unless we look right here, right now at what is present. So the Buddha explains the importance of the unborn, that which alone is unconditioned amongst all things, that which alone is not a thing, but is not subject to dependent origination, perhaps because it's not a thing. Though our ability to discern it may indeed be subject to dependent origination. Here's the Buddha. There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated. A lot of people don't think there is such a thing in Buddhism. They're very focused on dependent arising. But this is the Buddha. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, there would not be the case that escape from the born, become, made, fabricated would be discerned. But precisely because there is an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, escape from the born, become, made, fabricated is discerned. He also suggests in the non-born discourse, the Ajata Sutta, the connection between the unborn and the meditative path. The born, become, produced, made, fabricated, impermanent, fabricated of aging and death, a nest of illnesses perishing, come into being through nourishment, and the guide that is craving is unfit for delight. The escape from that is calm, permanent, a sphere beyond conjecture, unborn, unproduced, the sorrowless, stainless state, the cessation of stressful qualities, stilling of fabrication's bliss. Buddha also says in the Luminous Mind Sutta, the Pabhasara Sutta, luminous, monks, is the mind, and it is defiled by incoming defilements. Luminous, monks, is the mind, and it is freed from incoming defilements. Luminous, monks, is the mind, and it is defiled by incoming defilements. The uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person doesn't discern that it is actually is present, which is why I tell you that for the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person, there's no development of the mind. Luminous, monks, is the mind, and it is freed from incoming defilements. The well-instructed disciple of the noble ones discerns that as it is actually present, which is why I tell you that for the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, in other words, someone who practices, there is development of the mind. So we again see the idea that the unborn Buddha nature, the true nature of the mind, the ordinary mind, just as it is radiant at its core, luminous with the light of awareness. Thought and perception are reflections of this radiant awareness. And of course, it is human nature to have a mind subject to conditioning that covers over this core luminosity with all kinds of junk. Defilements, which are basically dirt, harmful tendencies, conditioned thoughts, delusions, false ideas about the nature of self and the nature of reality. But the Buddha suggests that as we take a breather, still the conditioned mind, let the senses become transparent, and stop for a while being enthralled with various shiny objects of the senses, and look back at the basic nature of the mind itself, what's called in Japanese in Zen ikohensho, turning the light of the mind back to look upon its source, our original faceless face, which is what we see when we look within without a mirror reflecting our image, we can reach a state of cessation or samadhi that is deep enough to be able to rest in our original nature before everything that distracts and pains us come into our awareness or came into our awareness. The original kingdom of the unborn, which is a place of stillness, but is also present in every moment of experience and activity, transparently running the show. As a Zen master once said, when asked what to do when the flower of awakening has not yet opened, it has already flowered.